Hello class, this is Professor Bloom and this is the Chapter 2 lecture continued, Part 2. And where we're going to pick up here is talking about the sphere of work. So the sphere of work, which is one of the 7 spheres of physical activity experience. So I want you to think about all the different jobs you've had in your past and what kinds of physical activity were required to complete those jobs. Think about the different types of physical activities you had to do to complete each of those jobs. And make sure you're thinking broadly about physical activity because there are many desk jobs that require physical activity, such as typing and filing. Rate your jobs. Which jobs were the most strenuous, the hardest on you physically? And how might your health have benefited from all the additional activity that you did as part of your work? And, you might consider how much physical activity when you're choosing a job or a career. Do you want a desk job versus an active job? There's pros and cons to both, of course. It's an individual preference, but physical activity in work definitely makes an impact. So physical activity, it's an integral part of our work. Physical activity allows us to produce goods and services. And there are specialists who are called ergonomists or human factors engineers whose job it is to focus on how to improve efficiency while we're working, productivity when we're working, and improve the safety of our workplace and prevent injury in the work setting. And they might do that in a variety of different ways, but here are some examples of setting up a workstation where they're considering the furniture that you're sitting at and you're using, the height and the angles and the supporting your feet, and all these various different things to help, again, prevent injury and make your workplace safer, make you more productive. Lifting heavy equipment, you can see they're using straps in the picture as a good example of how to do that in a way that is safer and prevents injury. And then the bottom picture is actually someone who is using a treadmill desk. And the treadmill desk moves very slowly, but it has several different benefits, one of which is it allows you to move while you're doing work. And so you're more physically active. It also encourages people that are working on a computer to stand. And of course, research shows that standing as opposed to sitting all day is definitely healthier, has positive health implications. So again, human factor engineers or ergonomists might have been responsible for designing these different types of workstations or products or things to help keep the workplace safer and more productive and prevent injury. So the challenge for kinesiologists is that physical activity is essential to work and there's risks in the workplace. And some of those risks are things like decreased physical activity levels and the associated health risks of having decreased physical activity levels, especially with the advancement of technology. And then there's injuries related to doing repetitive activities, such as typing over and over and over again, or doing the exact same movements over and over and over again. Or the poor design of workspaces, equipment, or tools. And there's also high levels of psychological stress and the associated increase in cardiovascular disease that kinesiologists worry about and focus on. So physical activity professionals contribute to work performance by doing some of the following things. They improve the methods used to perform work. Maybe they redesign inefficient workspaces, equipment, and tools. And again, they prevent and rehabilitate work-related injuries. One last thing I want to say about the sphere of work is that because so many jobs have such high levels of stress or low levels of physical activity, many businesses, corporations have recognized the need to offer exercise and sport programs for their employees. So moving along in the 7 spheres of physical activity experience, the next one we're going to discuss is education. The education sphere includes that aspect in life in which we seek to learn new skills or knowledge, and in this process, physical activity usually plays an important role. Physical activity is integral to all forms and levels of education. For instance, writing, our hand, wrist, and arm movements, and reading, eye movement to complete an English assignment, using a calculator to complete math assignments, learning new skill or knowledge in any area, and of course, physical education. Instruction in sport and exercise, recreational and private, is also part of physical activity education. Employment training, assembly tasks, word processing, rescues, etc. And fitness, private and corporate. And the sphere of education includes that aspects of our lives in which we set out to learn new skills or knowledge. Usually physical activity plays an important role in this sphere, whether it's in connection with learning cognitive material or learning to perform physical skills. And those are all just examples of that in the pictures above. Physical education is the only near universal program of sport and exercise instruction available to young people. And so for that reason, it should be of the highest quality possible. There's research that suggests that the United States and Canada are experiencing an epidemic of adult and childhood obesity. Increasing the time allotted to physical education programs in the schools would seem to be one way to counteract this trend, but just simply requiring physical education might not lead to a reduction of overweight and an increase in physical activity in youth. More is going to be needed. Some of the concerns and obstacles are that PE classes are taught differently depending on the school that you're at, where you live in the country, the amount of time that's devoted to it, the different level of activity that's required. But teaching lifetime sports skills to continue activeness into adulthood would seem like a good way to help keep people physically active as they get older and healthier. The challenge for kinesiologists is that the decreased physical activity levels of children are resulting in the growth in childhood overfatness and obesity. Again, public schools offer very limited physical education experiences, and some are of low quality. And as I was telling a student the other day who wants to go into this field, it's often one of the first things that gets cut or pink slipped in elementary school education, along with music and those other types of what schools consider to be electives. But one of the first things they cut out in a budget crisis is their physical education teachers and their physical education time. And that's really unfortunate and not good for student learning and student health. And kinesiologists must work to ensure that all programs are of high quality, and they benefit students in many ways, not just improving their health, although that is critically important, but also in developing those fundamental skills. The next sphere that we are going to talk about in the physical activity experience is leisure. Leisure is a state of being, and free time activities can help us attain this state. For example, large muscle physical activities like sport and exercise can help us to nourish and maintain a leisure disposition. So it's important to distinguish leisure from free time. Free time is our personal time not encumbered with obligations, but leisure is a state of being in which humans find deep satisfaction and contentment. And some people use their leisure to watch sports. And it raises concerns for physical activity professionals because this is a sedentary activity. And does watching sports keep people from participating in their own physical activities? Another thing to keep in mind is the relationship between aging and leisure physical activity, because our aging population is growing. And many older people are discovering that physical activity is a great way to fill leisure time. And of course, it has many positive health benefits. The challenge for kinesiologists is that leisure is a state of being that's vital to humans. But with our increasingly busy lives, it often limits our physical activity, especially our leisure. And there's a need to show people the benefits of leisure time and to teach people to participate in free time physical activity pursuits that lead to a state of leisure. The next sphere we're going to talk about is the sphere of health. There's a strong relationship between physical activity and health. Low physical activity levels spark national interest related to high healthcare costs, disease prevention, and treatment. There are physiological and psychological effects of exercise, and there's potential detriments that involve physical activity with regard to overexercise and injuries. The challenge for kinesiologists is that there is a health crisis of critical proportions in our country because there's a failure by people to make physical activity part of our daily lives. And so physical activity professionals need to determine how to get people active while providing the safest, most effective, most efficient routes to attaining health benefits from physical activity. The last sphere that we're going to look at is the sphere of competition. And the word competition, COMPETITION, is your access code for the Chapter 2 quiz. Competition in physical activity is usually associated with sport, although it can exist in exercise. It can be positive or negative, and the different types of competition are side-by-side, face-to-face non-contact, face-to-face contact, and impersonal. The challenge for kinesiologists is that competition comes naturally to humans, and physical activity is an important avenue for expressing our competitive natures. Competition can express itself in a positive or negative manner, and kinesiologists need to teach sports skills and create environments in which enjoyable competition can take place and that there's fair play, similar performance levels, a reduction of injuries, etc. How are you impacted by your physical activity experiences? Your life is filled with physical activity experiences. These spheres help us to understand that better. Think carefully about how these experiences contribute to your independence, your ability to perform necessary personal, social, and work-related tasks, and your enjoyment of life. Don't forget to take and click on your Chapter 2 lecture quiz using